I would say like don't trust anyone or anything you see. I think especially in crypto, trends come and go like really fast. Just a couple of months ago, everyone is saying Telegram bots is a future. Like last year, NFTs was a future. There's like Olympus DAO forks was a future. It's really important to find your own thesis and challenge every assumption.
Hey everybody, Tanner here with Wagner Ventures. On today's episode, we have David and Dima, co-founders at Layer N, as well as Patricia, head of growth at Layer N. For anyone who's new, this is the Wagner Ventures podcast, where we do snapshots with interesting builders and founders from across Web3. Check out wagnerventures.io to learn more about the syndicate behind the podcast. But for now, let's get into it with David, Dima, and Patricia at Layer N. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm here today with David and Dima, co-founders at Layer N, as well as Patricia, the head of growth at Layer N as well. Everyone, how's it going today? What's up?
Doing great. Great on my
Good.
end.
Thanks for having us, Tanner.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for coming on. I'm super pumped to chat, and I know we have a ton to talk about, so it's going to be a great conversation. So maybe to start, just by way of quick introduction, maybe could each of you just go through and tell us kind of your quick, intro to Web3, intro to crypto story. And I'd love to hear a little bit about the genesis of Layer N as well, but maybe just like your personal story first. Like, how did you get into all this? What piqued your interest? What does that story look like?
I guess I can start. We'll share like brief of my background. David and I kind of have like the same Web3 story, but prior to crypto, I was mostly interested in AI space, doing research in reinforcement learning, neurotech, did a little bit of VC and like also briefly worked with Morgan Stanley. But then 2021 happened, where David and I and like another friend from high school essentially saw like this massive like space growing and decided to jump in. We initially made a jump into Solana space, spent some time in the DeFi there, built a protocol, kind of saw like ins and outs, like what it's like to talk to market makers, talk to traders, understanding institutional angle better, understanding also like flaws and problems with blockchain today. And through that experience, I came to the idea of Layer N, like, okay, let's build something that like addresses all of the issues like that exist today and actually provide like 0 to 1 innovation in the blockchain space where we can see it becoming like the infrastructure layer of like finance today, by like in 5 to 10 years, for example.
Sweet. I can quickly jump in with my background. It's very short and sweet. Like Dima mentioned, knew him since high school. The third person that Dima was mentioning is our third co-founder, who's CTO, but not with us today, unfortunately. But yeah, I was studying CS at Harvard, was doing mostly bioinformatics research before jumping into space. Gone to space, like you mentioned, through some hackathons, and just got really excited by the pace of innovation. And then through that experience, got to get very familiar with the world of DeFi and financial infrastructure on chain. And yeah, we realized that there was a huge need for what we were building. And so just dived more and more deep into what is today Layer N.
And on my side, so I was studying philosophy, politics, and economics at the University of Warwick back in England, and got into the crypto space during the bull market, and just been teaching like ESE at the time, and just doing a lot of different like DeFi stuff on chain. And then I joined the teams, the C3.network, Euler Finance, or Euler Finance, and also Vertex protocols, to basically help them out with their BD strategies and also growth side of things. I think like for now, like DeFi space is really exciting, and there needs to be a better infrastructure for them to be built on top of. I think like that's kind of the vision we have at Layer N. I'm super excited to be joining the team.
Perfect. Okay. Super interesting. So let's turn and talk about Layer N then. Maybe to start, what was some of the genesis insights about what you've come to start building and what is really the need? Like, what is Layer N building? And then kind of what were the problems that you saw that you originally sought to address?
Yeah. So back in the days when we first started building in crypto, one of the first things that we built was this fully on-chain order book protocol for virtual assets. And through that experience, we worked very, very closely with institutional firms and most of the biggest market makers and liquidity providers, as well as traders and DeFi founders, and essentially realized that like the type of complex financial instrument that we were building was just unsustainable due to the lower level blockchain infrastructure that we were building on. And we spent a lot of time looking around for alternative solutions with different other L1s and L2s and realized that no one was really trying to solve this problem specifically for these types of high throughput, low latency financial applications. And so over time, what started out as researching how to scale up the order book on chain eventually became this generalizable underlying technology that we could use for any type of financial instrument, really. And that eventually became what is today layer N, right? And so really from a high level, layer N, the problem that layer N is trying to solve is we look at networks like Visa, NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, even stuff like Coinbase or Binance, and then we compare that to our cutting edge on-chain scaling solutions that we have today, and you're just looking at magnitudes of difference when it comes to throughput, latency, and even reliability, right? And so the goal of layer N is to not only bridge that gap, but also to tap into the opportunities of blockchain designs to make financial systems more secure, composable, liquid, and capital efficient, right? And so the core premise of layer N is not only to be a new layer 2 specifically designed to scale financial applications initially on Ethereum, but more importantly to, eventually bridge in the entire global digital asset economy on chain, right? And so eventually also bridge in that institutional liquidity. And there's really sort of two pillars, right? Like one is this idea of enabling better performance such that from a very basic standpoint, like market makers and liquidity providers can provide better depth, and you can run actual like modern financial applications on chain. And two, create a network that's actually highly composable such that liquidity can be easily shared and used and margined and leveraged across different applications and instances, right? And so one of the key aspects of layer N is that we're not just like a single layer 2 rollup, right? We're actually a network of rollups. So I'll leave it at that as kind of the high level introduction, as I'm sure Tanner, you might have some more specific questions. And then Dima, Pat, if I missed anything, feel free to add on.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. So, for anyone who maybe is newer to the space, I think there may be a perspective where it's like, okay, I can, in theory, maybe understand why everything you just said is valuable. Maybe could you talk specifically to those people and explain why is, scalability, the whole concept, like why is that important? What does that enable specifically? If these blockchains and networks are currently at a given throughput or latency, what happens if you 10x that, 100x that, et cetera, that couldn't happen otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts like from a simple comparison in terms of like already existing financial infrastructure, right? You look at Nasdaq, it does above 200K transactions a second, it does thousands of trades a second, right? And that's just only one exchange, right? And you look around at Visa, MasterCard, each one of those financial networks does thousands of transactions a second. It's not hard to see the need for high throughput networks and especially low cost networks, right? That's otherwise like we are trying to squeeze in like this gigantic financial space on a network which can only handle a few dozens of transactions. It becomes completely unscalable. And especially what happens is that like the price goes up like massively, right? We saw that like just happened within crypto where Ethereum like gas prices go up to hundreds of dollars, right? It's completely unsustainable. And that only happened like within crypto space. It didn't even touch like stock market, didn't touch any other financial applications. And when we look to other aspects of building better infrastructure, there's like latency aspect to it, right? With latency, we look at like traditional exchanges where every single firm is trying to fight to be the closest to servers, like have the highest processing speeds. They're working in nanoseconds, right? So you're not even working with milliseconds, like how most of the newer blockchains like mark their latency. So just like looking at those two numbers, it's not hard to just see that we need much stronger infrastructure with higher throughput, lower latency. If we really aim to come and tell like to financial institutions that we have a better alternative, right? And especially with our design, we are able to achieve permissionlessness, we are able to achieve decentralization by relying on Ethereum, while still providing a valid tech alternative. And with that in mind, like we believe that like we can actually like have a really high probability chance like to convert a lot of institutional players to the blockchain compared to other existing solutions.
Really interesting. Okay. Thank you. So, I want to talk a little bit more about what you're building, but maybe it would be helpful just to situate us in the space a little bit where I think my curiosity here would be about sort of the market dynamics of the space in which you're building, where it doesn't seem like it's a winner take all space, right? So I think I'm curious, how do you think about those dynamics? How do you think about differentiation and competition? What role do you see yourselves and what you're building playing in the market? Anything along sort of those lines before we jump a little bit further in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we are not necessarily looking at all of this like crypto chains, etc., with the goal of like essentially becoming one chain for all. We recognize that there are a lot of system out there which are already built out. We also think a lot about bridging, how we can bring users from other chains, like how we can cooperate, bring other liquidity. So we agree that like it's not going to be winner take all. Like, and we actually have a lot of features in development which can hopefully make it easier for assets like to move from one chain to another, especially to layer N. We also talk to a lot of bridges as well. Our goal is, yeah, like make it as easy as possible for users to come from other ecosystem, make it as easy as possible for developers to collaborate with projects on our chain. And at the same time, like probably goal number one is to build the best environment so that like our network plays like a massive role in crypto development.
And I think also to
Got
add on to that is like I think for us, we're really focusing on being the infrastructure for like DeFi protocols when they want to like have transparency on chain and at the same time like capturing users that really cares about decentralizations and also transparency. So I think like different roles and also different like infrastructures they have like different focuses on like what kind of like position to attract and what kind of users they want to bring on. But I think for us like we're just really focusing on being the best infrastructure for DeFi protocols that cares about on-chain transparency and also like user acquisitions that cares about like the same kind of decentralizations aspects. So I think like for example for users that got vexed by FTX, unfortunately, like for those kind of users, they had been using like exchange that was building on top of us, I have like a full on-chain transparency, like the same thing wouldn't be happening, right? So like I think this kind of aspect is like we want to attract the exchanges to come on to us to build the exchanges that has the kind of on-chain transparency that is towards the users that don't want to experience the same thing that happened during FTX, and also like the applications that don't want to, for example, having to suffer from like tens of seconds of latencies on chain to be able to like integrate with our infrastructure without having to build the Intel or own backend of like on-chain sequences and all that. Being able to like just utilize us as the best infrastructure like in the space and like attract the users that cares about decentralizations, transparency over to our system.
Got it. Love it. Okay. So this is a bit of a recurring question on this podcast where I think one of the best ways to always get at what people are building is to talk about really like what have you had to go through or what kind of obstacles have you had to overcome to build what you're building. And so I want to put that question to you where, earliest challenges, I guess, like maybe one or two challenges or obstacles that were unexpected, but I think I'm most curious, I guess what they were, but especially like how did your team think about solving those and what kind of impact has it made downstream?
I think we could think about this problem as like there being, there's really two categories of challenges in the early stages. Like one is the technical side, and then two is really on the product market fit side, right? On the technical side, right, it's not easy to build a layer two, let alone like a network of rollups as we're doing. So we needed really, really strong partners who can come in and help fill a lot of the gaps where, we would not be able to spend as many dedicated resources on, right? And so we're super fortunate to have been working and still are working very, very closely with teams like RiskZero and EigenLayer, specifically on the zero knowledge fraud proof and EigenDA components, respectively. Without them, we would need to spend time, building those components out ourselves, which would obviously take a long time to sort of get to product and market. And I think that's also sort of key as to sort of why we haven't seen something like Layer N happen, 2 years ago, is just because a lot of the core innovations around increasing D bandwidth and the type of generalizable ZK proofs that can be computed using like Rezeros provers just didn't exist 2 years ago, right? And so the sort of convergence of a lot of these technologies and the fact that we were able to work with these teams very, very early on allowed us to sort of get to overcome a lot of these technical challenges. On the second point, with regards to product market fit, so that was also like a really big question, right? Like, okay, like, we faced these issues of scalability when we tried to build on-chain order books, but would this be something that other teams would also care about? And like, obviously theoretically, increasing capital efficiency and creating like a shared liquidity layer, that makes a lot of sense. But is this something that people truly, truly care about and can overcome the sort of tribalism that we're also, very used to in crypto? So, and I'm excited to share without, disclosing specific partner names, but we've had a lot of conversations with teams who are very, very excited about what we're doing. And a lot of that has also generally amplified the direct and focused the direction for us in terms of where we're headed. Right. And so I guess like, yeah, like to sort of answer your question around like what were some of the big challenges and how we overcame them. Like, yeah, on the technical side, it was really through working with some really, really S tier teams in the space. And then on the product market fit side, it was really just being in the space, right? Having built these things ourselves and having had a lot of these conversations, not only with other protocol founders, but also with actual traders and the institutions who would be providing liquidity, and understanding sort of their pain points and effectively confirming sort of our hypotheses around what we were building with them was really sort of like a pivotal moment for us to really sort of validate our theory. And so with those challenges sort of overcome, we're really excited to sort of move towards testnet and mainnet in the coming months.
Love it. Okay. So I'd love to zoom out a little bit and talk maybe about crypto space sort of writ large here, where kind of in no particular order, had some general thoughts and some general questions I wanted to ask. So maybe first one, I'm curious from maybe we could go kind of around the room here. I'm curious from each of your perspectives, like, what do you think we're getting right in crypto here in 2023? And what do you think, we could do a little bit better on as a space? And obviously, lots of actors, lots of activity. So, recognizing can't speak for everyone, but from your perspective, like, what's going right, what's going wrong here in 2023, especially given where we're at kind of in this market cycle and with that context.
I guess I can start. In terms of positive, I feel like there's nothing comparable in crypto when it comes like to permissionlessness, where you see thousands of like developers like building new applications, exploring new use cases, right? Which is it never existed really before in finance. Everything was been really restricted when it comes like to developing new primitives. It always like incredibly expensive. It's incredibly slow. Like when you look at what technology is being used in finance, it's like decades old and moves like really slowly. So I think like crypto space in terms of that aspect, like got everything right. And I sincerely believe that like we project like the evolution of that, like in like say decades, like we see how financial systems can really be transformed and how much we can like improve our lives and just in general like cut down costs in terms of like how financial systems operate and open up like the innovation just the same way how like internet make it possible like to build so many useful products for everyone in the world. In terms of like things like where I think like we can improve, like is one previously being developer myself, like in the DeFi space specifically, right? We saw like what it's like to build applications in crypto. And really huge blocker was always like, oh, let's say computation, cost, right? Like what can be done in blockchains today is incredibly limited, right? And you look at a lot of protocols that exist today, they're starting to see those like blockers become more and more prominent, right? Let's take Aave. right? They're using incredibly simple mechanism when it comes like to managing risk, right? They're literally waiting for Chaos Labs or Gauntlet to come in and tell them like, okay, we need to update these parameters. It's incredibly slow, inefficient, and can be improved massively if you build a more robust or complicated protocol to account for a lot of risks and monitor market dynamics. And that's just like one example of many where I think like if we increase compute, if we expand boundaries, what's possible in a blockchain, we can significantly improve our space and build better products, which can hopefully provide like a stronger product market fit as well. And another one is just like the direction of like how can we connect like existing crypto world to the real world space, like how can we tokenize the right assets. I think we saw probably dozens of protocols for tokenizing treasury bills, but I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot more opportunities out there to bring assets on chain like who can have like a massive demand. And we see a lot of partners like who are really interested in pushing that space forward, where we can solve a lot of problems in the regular financial world. And we see a lot of positive feedback from actually like people like from large banks and institutions who see that potential. And I feel like in that direction, like crypto space is moving a bit slowly right now.
Yeah, I think like on my side, what I see like is being like really exciting in the space is that this year a lot more people started caring more about decentralization, being permissionless, and also on-chain transparency. I think everyone got traumatized by what happened to FTX last year, and also like the upcoming trials and all that. So I think like that has left a significant kind of traumatic like scar on everyone's heart. And I think like this year we saw a lot more discussions around how can we be more decentralized, how can we make on-chain transparency like better for the protocols to manage the risk and for users to make sure like the funds are actually like safe on-chain, to really see through like the operations of like the exchanges and all that. We've seen some kind of movements from central exchanges towards like on-chain transparency and all that. Yeah, I think this is a great trend that the interspace is like following. And on the like negative side, I think there's still like a lot of like tribalism going on chain, and I think like also it's a kind of the bear market. Some people have left the space, lost like their commitment like to like the long-term visions of crypto. I think that's kind of sad, but at the same time, there are a lot of people that also stayed in the space. They kept building like different DeFi new initiatives, choosify new initiatives, and all that. I think this kind of innovation is what's really like driving us over this bear market and towards like a better like cycle, I would say. And also at the same time is like the conversations around like LSTs and decentralization. How do we like make all the assets more transparent and more like permissionless and have like that kind of on-chain transparency like deeply coded into every single protocols out there. I think like that's kind of a great trend we're seeing right now. So I'm still like overall very optimistic about the space.
Yeah, Dima and Pat gave some really great points. I'll try to keep mine short. For me, yeah, what crypto got right is really just permissionless innovation and connectivity, right? Like you don't have that scale of innovation in a very sort of, bureaucratic and, and system where you have multiple loops and turns to that you need to get around to simply connect from one system to another. And so that's super, super exciting, right? Like a more interconnected and composable global system. What I think it can still improve on and is sort of the area of opportunity that we're also super focused on is something that Dima also talked about a bit, which is really bridging that sort of traditional financial and institutional liquidity on chain, right? Like how do we get that right? How do we create this unifying layer where we can have both this permissionless liquidity, but as well as this world of TradFi that has trillions of assets that is yet untapped, right? And so how do we bring that over and then how do we provide a secure enough network for them, right? And so, yeah.
Love it. Yeah, I think that those are all super interesting perspectives. So, next question here might be kind of a backwards way of asking your advice. But the way I like to ask it is kind of also a recurring question on this podcast where, think time machine here. You're able to go back to the beginning of your sort of your crypto journey. For anyone who's listening that maybe is newer, what advice would you want to impart to yourself from kind of your present wiser self that maybe would have smoothed the path a little bit or help navigate the space a little bit? What's some of that hard-won wisdom that you would have appreciated had someone maybe told you, or maybe if you were told, you had known to take it seriously, right?
I think I can start this one. I think in general, it's just really have kind of a vision of what is crypto about and why are you in this space, right? I think the real OGs over here stayed since years ago in this market, over single cycles all have the core commitment of crypto is really about just being permissionless, being transparent, being the financial rails for everything to be eventually on chain, being the kind of the ultra computer that no one can shut it down, to run all of the operations on chain. So I think having these kind of visions is really important to help people really go through the up and downs in crypto, which happens a lot, and really kind of gives people the vision of, okay, why am I in crypto and what should I be doing in this bear market? What else can I do to help to contribute to the space? What kind of protocols can I build that would really help push the frontier of the space?
Yeah, on my end, the quick advice would just be similar to Pat, but have a vision for what you're building and what the space looks like 5 to 10 years from now, right? And not just look at what's shiny and what's trendy and what's hype at the moment, right? Really think deeply about, okay, what's your actual thesis for in 5 years? What does the world look like? And why is your thing relevant in that kind of world, right?
Yeah, I think my answer is also a bit similar. I would say don't trust anyone or anything you see. I think especially in crypto, trends come and go really fast. Just a couple of months ago, everyone is saying Telegram bots is a future. Last year, NFTs was a future. There's Olympus DAO forks was a future. It's really important to find your own thesis and challenge every assumption, because you will see so many signals that saying something works, right? But everything here comes and goes, right? It can go up massively and then go down massively and just as quickly. And even the most sophisticated players end up making a lot of mistakes, as you're seeing right now as well. And we saw throughout the past 2 years. So I would say just challenging your every assumption, figuring out your own view on the world, or your own view of why some stuff works, why some doesn't, because ultimately it's really hard to rely on whatever's public, and important to develop your own thesis and thinking around this space.
Love it. That's great advice. Okay, so last question here for you all. What is your team working on right now, and what's the best way for people to follow along on the journey?
Yeah, I think right now we are deep down in the trenches building. We are also looking for a lot of strong partners. So if you're a product who is interested in building really innovative things in DeFi, please reach out. And as well as if you're interested in more institutional financial space, whether it's tokenization, also please reach out, because those two areas are the most interesting to us. And that's our focus number one: build things which push the boundaries of what crypto can offer right now. And we're just looking for the best people to work with.
I'll also add, we're also hiring for really awesome people. And so if you're looking to join a team, already on a team, but looking for your next chapter and looking to join really one of the best teams in crypto, please reach out. And then best way to follow us is definitely Twitter, Discord.
The best way to follow us, Twitter, at Lian_official. And from there, you'll be able to find the links to all our communities, including Discord, Telegram, and all that.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you all so much for coming on the show. Super interesting takes and really awesome what you guys are building. I can't wait to follow along all the exciting progress. So thanks again and have a great rest of your week here.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Tanner.
Thank you, Tanner.
Thank you, Tanner.
All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.